As person grows older, it's not that the head has lost the ability to balance, well, unless there's dementia setting in, of course. On a scale of even the automatic nervous system is deteriorating. But typically it's a problem down there, ground level, the ankles, feet, muscles in the legs. Need to coordinate. It could even be osteoporosis, so that the bones themselves are getting weak. Both, you will understand, is the lack of proper exercise and presumably the right nutrition to help, but typically sedentary behaviour. You're less able to balance. It's not that the mind is less willing to balance or even less able to coordinate what it has, but what it has is now increasingly missing: strength and the wherewithal in the legs and the ankles in particular. So you exercise a little, you walk more, possibly carefully with a stick to begin with, but I mean, you just rotate the foot several times in each direction as you lift the leg off the ground. Not while walking, I mean, it's an exercise in itself. You build those muscles and coordination in the limbs. You may say, well, that was pretty obvious. Yes, and the lack of doing the obvious has meant many people fall, and then of course a fall can be a big downhill run to premature death and so on. One thing leads to another. Okay, that's obvious, isn't it? We need balance. It's an astonishing thing, the two-legged creature, isn't it? Not only balances by standing on two legs, he balances much of the time on one as he takes a step in one direction or another. He's coordinating his balance while making the stride or movement. The ability of the mind probably hasn't changed in many cases. The ability, the technology to carry it out is lacking because of lack of use. What do you do about it? Well, you have to have someone like me or like others that have affected me. You need contact with them because they say, well, I can give you hope if you do the following. You see the logic of it, can't you? Oh, yes. Well, then you'll achieve what you want. So it's knowing what you value balance, having the hope of achieving it. You know how to achieve it. That's the technology. So the hope and the technology together go in the right direction. Of course, you might hope for something that's unreasonable. You're going to be an athlete, even though you're 94, And it really causes yourself a lot of problems. We want reasonable hope, reasonable faith. Not so reasonable that there's no faith and no hope. And that's what we tend to do when we're negative. We emphasize the impossibility of things instead of their reasonable possibility, and hope for priority over other actions, and especially non-action. Volition is this, you see. A reasonable expectation, ideally, of what could perhaps be achieved. And a certain sensitivity to whether we're getting anywhere as we do it. We need sometimes to make major U-turns when we realize we're going down the wrong road. So we need faith, hope, trust. And we achieve this by being very familiar with what works in the past. And yes, we need to bear in mind what doesn't work, but not to the exclusion of what does and what might work. We need reasonable hope. Does this sort of strategy work? Yes, right, we'll stick to this sort of strategy until we think there's good reason to change it. And someone comes along and gives us the hope that this might indeed be the case. We analyze it rationally, consider what the probable, as we understand it, expectation of outcomes will be with different scenarios of action. And then we go for what we see as a hopeful improvement. I don't mean I've perfected the procedure. I just mean it's something of this, isn't it? And we may be very good at this, or we may be very poor at it. At the minute we seem to have let our technology run away with us, and we end up with the most frightful wars that seem to be a consequence of our technology and our lack of love for each other, lack of kindness, lack of hope and trust. We seem to be very much children in these fields. And if we've abandoned religion, well, that's not was the one thing that was meant to help. Perhaps it didn't help very much. It was actually holding us up. So we need something rather better. At the minute, we seem to be suffering from a dearth of such. Whereas the original Jesus story was, I'm come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. If you have hope as a grain of mustard seed, you might say unto this mountain, be moved, and it shall obey you. Oh, inspiring words. Check out the validity of such. If you hope and trust in a God that's loving and kind, especially loves you, does life become more successful? Truly so. Happier, fuller, more blessed. Taste and see. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.